Alright guys, how you doing? So I wanted to come back with the second part of the video that I first made about the medical detachment. And I believe that the biggest thing that we get wrong as reenactors, and especially medical reenactors, is getting a lot of the battalion terms confused, mixed up, and we 9 times out of 10 generally never get it right. And I'm going to kind of break down the differences side by side now so you can see what the medical detachment is broken down beside the actual medical battalion of the infantry division. So many times we see medical organizations out in the reenactment community, and I'm not trying to bash anybody, but I'm just trying to raise awareness to where we can definitely improve on our impression. And you see so many units out there that have their unit signs up that say, you know, battalion, medical battalion, whatever, you know, aid station, and they have this full big elaborate setup going on, which is great. You know, I love going out and seeing other people's medical displays and their setups that they have. But 9 times out of 10, they're representing themselves as a medical battalion of an infantry division operating a battalion aid station, and portraying themselves as being a battalion aid station in first echelon medical service, meaning on the front lines, which is quite sincerely backwards. Like I spoke about before in the medical detachment video, that are forward front line, very first stages of medical care battalion aid stations that we're portraying at events, quote unquote, is within the medical detachment at the infantry regiment level. The medical battalion is a completely different operation, in terms of speaking of, you know, between what the detachment is to what the actual medical battalion is. And with the medical battalion, that organization is one of the organic units to the entire division. So whatever infantry division you're portraying, you know, you figure out what medical battalion was actually part of that division. And what the battalion primarily does is they are running the logistic works and the transportation of getting, you know, your wounded from the field to collecting stations, clearing stations, and eventually to an actual field hospital. So I'm going to go through the breakdown with you guys as to how that battalion is broken up, what jobs they have, and this is all on a basic level. I'm not going to be diving down into too nitty-gritty of detail, but I just want to give you the base overview of what the battalion structure looks like for the medical battalion, compare it side by side to the medical detachment, and see how they do intermingle with each other and work together at the same time. So at the top of, like any organization, at medical battalions, you're going to have the battalion headquarters. No surprise. So we're going to have battalion HQ at the top. And below that, you're going to have an HQ section for, it's called a headquarters detachment off to the side here. That headquarters detachment is going to primarily be running logistics, administration, stuff like that, planning and coordinating supplies for the headquarters, or for the battalion, the medical battalion, and also for that medical detachment within their infantry regiment organization. So on the same level we have coming down here off the battalion HQ is you're going to have 3 collecting companies. You're going to have collecting company A, collecting company B, collecting company C, and then you're going to have what's called a clearing company. We're going to do CLR, and that's usually D, following the same organization as the other companies. But so we have 3 collecting companies and a clearing company. Now, I just want to jump back before I break this down. The headquarters detachment is kind of broken down again a little bit. Not much. You're going to have like a personnel section, You're going to have your general supply section, which is going to be for your medical supplies. And then you're going to have motor maintenance, because within this organization there's a lot of vehicles. So you're going to have a motor division as well. So personnel, coordinating, planning, personnel, your general supply, that's pretty self-explanatory. And you're going to have like a motor section that's going to be taking care of all your vehicle maintenance, stuff like that. So I want to start with the collecting companies, because we're just going to kind of go by the order of how everything works. So your collecting companies, A, B, and C, if you think as to why there's 3 of them, why do you think that there might be 3 of them? Well, you have collecting company A, B, and C, which is 3. You have your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd battalion sections in your medical detachment. So these collecting companies are going to be organized to operate, coordinate, and communicate with each individual battalion section within that medical detachment. And I hope that makes sense to you, because it's kind of basic and straightforward. 3 collecting companies, their job is to go out to these aid stations, receive the wounded from there, bring them back to a collecting station. They are kind of like, they're still first echelon medical service, but they're second tier. You know, they're going to start being able to treat a little bit further than what they can take care of at the battalion aid station level in the field. They're going to be able to continue the evacuation process for the more seriously injured, and primarily being the main transportation aid of the wounded from this collecting, or from the battalion aid stations through the collecting companies. Now, if you were, considered minor, a minor injury, and you could be returned and fit for duty to go back to return back to your unit from a collecting station, you could definitely be part of that process. But then what's going to happen is if you're a major injury, you're going to be treated, stabilized, triage as to the level of severity of your injury, and then moved out of that collecting company to a clearing company. That clearing company is really where the first advanced levels of your evacuation really truly happen. That's where your primary property exchange is going to happen. You're going to have those patient effects bags, to where all your personal belongings are going to go into that. It's going to be tagged and identified as being yours, and it's going to be processed. Again, a next level of triage is going to happen at the clearing level, at the clearing station level. Again, they're going to treat you for what they can at that point. If you have any type of minor surgery, they might be able to, complete it there, sutures, stuff like that. This is where your first real medical records are going to be transcribed and formed for your process going further back into an actual field hospital further, down the line. There'll be a dispensary available as well, so if you need any of the most common, drugs to treat whatever you have going on, you'll be able to be prescribed that as well at the clearing station level. And also, the clearing station, because of their size, they will also perform interior guard duty if they need to for the medical battalion. Now, from there, there'll be an ambulance assigned from each one of these collecting companies to each one of these battalion sections of the medical detachment. And also, off of the battalion HQ, there is a liaison. There we go. Liaison section, which is going to be the primary communications from the medical detachment back to the battalion HQ to let them know what's going on. If they're having a leapfrog and set up and move really quick, or whatever their needs are, they'll be able to communicate that through the liaison section between the two organizations. But again, it's it's good to, be able to see both of the organizations broken down side by side, how vastly different they are, and how they do work together, though, at the same time, and they're part of each other's operations. But the biggest part that I really want to hit home is the fact that, in the World War II reenacting communities, again, 9 times out of 10, if you're not doing your research, and if you're not looking in really to what you're doing, and you're just kind of winging it, not, like I said, 9 times out of 10, you're portraying everything just wrong. These guys weren't operating company level battalion aid stations. This term, again, battalion, always gets mixed up and kind of put sideways. But yeah, so again, just wanted to, be able to bring these two side by side, show you the differences between them, what the breakdown is, the basic breakdown. It goes further than that, but just to see the correlation between the two organizations and how you can better yourself in the World War II reenacting community if you're a medical personnel, reenactor, either doing aidman, or if you're doing a battalion aid station and you're portraying a collecting company or you're portraying a clearing company. Well, that's great. But you should not be portraying yourself as being on the front lines operating a battalion aid station and you're labeling yourself as a battalion HQ. It's a little backwards. Also, the biggest thing, and this is going to be the most controversial thing that I will probably say on this entire video, but there were no nurses at battalion aid stations. From what I understand, from what I've read, and I've dived deep down into this, and we see it all the time in the World War II reenacting community, that we have nurses in battalion aid stations. If you're doing a battalion aid station at the infantry regiment medical detachment level, there were, from what I understand and from what I've read personally, I may be wrong, it happens, but there were no nurses assigned to medical detachments operating within battalion aid stations on the front lines. There was a few reasons for that. One, the Army was very, very cautious as to how far forward they wanted their females getting into the front lines. I'm not saying that, nurses did not operate in dangerous environments, nor did they operate under receiving fire conditions, because surely medical battalion, collecting companies and supply or sanitary trains and evacuation trains all came under fire at some point. Totally do not discredit that whatsoever. But what I am trying to bring light to is that we're portraying nurses being in battalion aid stations on the front lines when, from what I understand and from what I read, it never happened. Maybe back here in the medical battalion somewhere there might have been a nurse, possibly when there was a severe shortage, but 99.9.5% of your Army nurses were located at the field hospital level and beyond, convalescent hospitals, station hospitals, mobile hospitals, the transportation trains, the medical transportation trains. There were flight nurses that were on aircraft that were doing evacuations, all that stuff, because it was, well behind the front lines. Not necessarily saying it was safer, but their care and their ability to provide their care was more useful in those environments than it was in the front lines down and dirty, in the hardcore section of things, I guess I could say. But if you want to challenge me on this, I would love to find out more. If you have evidence that Army nurses were at the, regimental level in actual battalion aid stations up front, a mile or two off the front lines, I'd love to read about it and learn about it. But yeah, this is a heavy hitter for me that, I'm just trying to bring awareness to. I'm not trying to bash anybody, but I'm just trying to say it's something that we've been doing wrong and we're not portraying it correctly. So yeah, that's my heavy hitter for this episode, and I'll have another video coming up. I'm going to be doing medical kits next. I'm going to be reviewing the 1924 basic medical, first aid kit, and the M2 jungle kit. So again, if you guys have any comments, want to see future videos on another topic, or you got some information for me about Army nurses being at the regimental level in aid stations, I would love to know. But until then, have a great night.